titled Your Data, Your Way, where we cover how flexible Hull can be to adapt to different data flow needs. Today, we'll talk more about data transformation, which is a nice way of saying how to compute and generate new data points. We will wait a minute or two for people to gather, and then we'll take off. Okay, I think we can start this webinar right now. So as I have mentioned, today we'll talk about data transformation, how to compute and generate new data points using different tools in our CDP platform. Let me first introduce myself. My name is Michał. I'm product owner and product manager at Hull. I mostly oversee the connectors development, and just so you know, connectors are not only tools to integrate with different services, they are also ways to inject certain logic in your platform. So I'll be also showing you some connectors today. Um, so our head of marketing put me a green hat because of today's happy St. Patrick's Day. So yeah, I hope that spirit of fun will be with us today, since it's a pretty data intense webinar. So let's start with some agenda for tonight. I'll start with a quick introduction to Hull overall, what Hull is and what are the core concepts, because you need to have that basic understanding to really figure out what's going on when we start to transform those data points. Then I will start talking about what is data transformation in general, and I will move to the most common use cases we encounter when we work with our customers. We'll start with something simple and we'll finish with more advanced use cases. And all of that will be shown on live demos from our dashboard. So you'll see exactly how our product works. If you will have any questions or comments or topics to discuss, we will be available together with Angela on the Zoom chat afterwards. We'll share the link at the end of the webinar. So let's start with high-level introduction to Hull, which is a B2B customer data platform. We allow you to connect multiple different tools such as CRMs, customer success and support tools, marketing automation tools, and generic communication tools in order to unify your customer data profiles. Then we give you tools to cleanse, transform, and segment that data in order to get your job done, which is about syncing and activating that data to provide more personalized experience for your customers. So let's put that in a more concrete way. So today we'll focus again on that transformation part where we work on data once it's important inside Hull. But before I go there, let's have a quick overview of how unified profile looks like. So inside Hull, we have two types of objects. There are users, which represents individuals, and accounts, which are a group of people. And there are two key elements on user profiles. First are attributes, which are data points about the user, and there are also events, which are all the activities performed by the user or related to the user. Let's jump directly into such profile that I have opened in my Hull dashboard before. This is, by the way, the profile of our director of marketing. And here on the left side in that table, we can see all the data points that we discover about that particular user. We can see some data points coming from marketing automation tool, from CRM, and for instance, from Livestorm, the app we are using today for webinars. These are the attributes on the left side, and on the right side, we see the stream of events related to the user. So we see the user registered for a webinar, then browsed some website, and then opened and received certain email and replied to that email. So that's all the information gathered from multiple sources on that single user profile. The last important part that we'll focus more in next parts of the webinar series are the segments. So these are user views built on a certain criteria, and that information is also bubbled up on the user profile. So that was a very high overview of what HAL is doing, what are the key objects, what are the key elements such as attributes and events on user profiles. So we are ready to start the main part of the webinar today. Let's talk about what is data transformation. From our perspective, when we work with our customers and we help them unify their customers' data across multiple tools they are using in their marketing and sales stack, the data transformation is the process of changing the format structure or values of certain data points. And it can be as simple as just casting the type between string, a number, or date type, or date time type, which can be often related to some technical requirements, or it can be even about creating new data from existing data. And you can think about having some raw data points about, a couple of things related to the user or multiple events, and then you want to create a new data point based on some business logic that you implement. So it's easier to use, because making it more useful and actionable is the main reason why you would like to transform data. If you want to use your data in certain situations or certain contexts, you may need to transform the structure or format slightly to adapt your needs in your destination tools. Or you want to get some aggregate on multiple values before you build a segment, or you want to slightly change the format before you put a certain data point in your marketing template or inside the marketing campaign before you personalize a user messaging. So these are different reasons and ways to transform data. And today we show you those in 3 different use cases. These will be in total 4 different demos. We'll start with the most simple cleansing and data standardization use case. Then we'll move into slightly more advanced unification scenario where we take into consideration multiple attributes coming from multiple sources, where you need to define which one has the correct or the most reliable value. And we'll finish with the use case where we will generate new data based on raw data and based on some logic that we'll implement. So let's start with the first one, cleansing data. Actually, it will be a continuation of what we did in the previous part of the webinar, where Tim, our head of product, was showing you how you can manually cleanse data in HAL. And the specific example he showed was to find all the different job titles, which are different mostly for a machine, but a human being can easily say, yeah, pretty much these are, they mean the same when the person reads them, but it's not that straightforward where you want to implement them in a segment or in a marketing campaign. So he needed to manually cleanse that. And today I'll show you a way how you can automate that process so you don't need to repeat that manual operation again and again. So let me just switch off the slides and go back to my HAL dashboard. And first, let's start by looking what data we are facing here. So I search for job title coming from a CRM. and I'll pull up all the users who have some value. And here on the right side, we can see those different values. So we have uppercase CEO, we have president and CEO, lowercase CEO, even something like chief executive officer. So to unify that and to standardize that value, I will use our processor connector. That connector is pretty special. It doesn't integrate with any specific tool. It gives you a JavaScript console. And I know some of you may be slightly discouraged by the fact that it will require some coding, but you'll see that actually it's pretty straightforward to build a simple scenario, and then I will show you even additional features of the connector that will help you make it more maintainable even for less technical people. So I'll just make sure that we know this is all the JavaScript console, that we can write some JavaScript. And here on the left side, I have a preview of a user representation inside the system. So I can scroll down and see different elements. I see some Clearbit data points, and I will see the HubSpot job title here. So that's how I can easily see what's the data I'm facing here. So let's start by defining my standardization strategy. So this will be a simple JavaScript object where I define what's my standardized value and what are the all values that should be converted into the standardized one. You can make it more, convenient for your teammates to edit that by adding some comments. But as I mentioned, I will also show you some nice way to make it more editable. Then I will drop one more function that will process that map and process the data that's on the user profile and put correct value. I won't go into more details to what's going on here. It can probably, that JavaScript function could be slightly simpler or more complex depending on your use case. But we also try to help our customers by providing a list of snippets that will help them start with some basic code. And the last part I need to put here is how to write those results back to the user profile. So as you can see, I'm writing to a new job title attribute, and I prepend that with a unified keyword. And that's just a convention. You could call that anyhow you want, but that's something we advise our customers to do, to put that in a separate group of attributes so they can see on the user profile, okay, these are attributes computed inside HAL. They are not coming from a single service, but they are somehow computed and transformed in the meantime. Here on the right side, we have a preview of the result. So we see that this user identified by those claims will receive this attribute. And once I save that code, I can run it, and every user coming in and matching this logic here will be standardized, and it won't require any manual operation or action from my end. And that data point could be mapped out to any other connector or any other target destination service. As I said before, editing such code may not be very straightforward for less technical people. That's why in the processor settings, you can find a section called custom variables, where you can define any variable that will be injected into your code. And if you parse those variables, you can, for instance, make something like that. Let's say I will call a variable standardized job title CEO. And then in the values, I will paste pretty much the same list I had in the code, but separated with semicolons. And then you can add more stuff here. Let's say standardized job title COO, and we can start writing different values here as well. So as you can see, you can provide a basic UI. You would need to write a code that will parse those variables and apply them to your logic, but you can see it may be much more straightforward and convenient for less technical people to go to this UI and edit the values that have impact on your data transformation. So that was the first use case we wanted to show you today, how to standardize and cleanse data in an automatic and ongoing matter, and showing you also a way how to make it easier for less technical people. Let's jump now to a slightly more complex scenario where you would like to unify data coming from different services. So let's say you have a data point, which is pretty much the same data point, but coming from different sources. And the problem is that the reliability of those sources is different. There are some sources which you can rely more on, but some may sometimes yield a wrong result. Or a different problem is that you don't have all the information all the time as your user is moving through his user or customer journey. So if a person is a lead, you don't know everything about him. You may not have all the data points yet. So you don't want to rely on those raw data points for your segmentation because they may not be there yet, or they may not be reliable enough. Here, the data unification strategies comes into play, and there are two things. I will show you slightly more complex one. Uh, but you can think about something as simple as a fallback strategy or a priority strategy. These are just two names for the same thing. When you tell HAL, okay, Clearbit data is my first choice. If it's not available, I want to fall back on geolocation information based on the IP of the user. If it's not found, then I would like to fall back on the phone number. If it's available, you can derive the country from the phone number country code in the beginning. If, or for instance, if the firm is available, then it should go first. But there is also additional strategy, which may sound a little bit more complex, that we call core, which can look at all of those attributes at the same type, at the same time, and return the value which have the majority, which the majority of sources returned. So I will show you that right now. And actually, the connector I'm going to show you is something which is still a work in progress, but I wanted to give you some sense of where our product is heading in this area. So I will search of a connector that we call unification. You won't find that on our website yet, but we make it available for certain users. But the thing is that behind the scenes, it's using a JavaScript code, but it's just an adapted UI that makes it easier. In the connector settings, you will find a user unification section where you can define your computed or unified attributes. So I have the priority strategy that I talked, and I have a quorum strategy. Let me just maybe start again so you'll see how I build such a computed attribute. That will be the quorum strategy, which will look at multiple attributes at the same time. So let's start to implement that scenario I've shown you on the slide. So I want to to compute country code unified attribute. And now I can say it may be coming from Clearbit, the country code returned from the enrichment tool. It can come from type firm, which will be a firm submission, but it can also come from phone number. Oh, sorry, I deleted by accident, and country code coming from phone number, which will be probably some additional computation we have made before to derive the country code from the country code. And the last part was website country code, which will be based on the geolocation. And after I save that, this logic will start running, and it will start looking at all those four attributes at the same time to decide which value is the most reliable. So if I go to the users list, and I'll show you what was the input of that operation. I have very bare user profile, which only contains those values in question. So as you can see, I have 4 attributes. 3 of them are saying this person is coming from Portugal. So his phone country code is +351, which is Portugal. his website location tells us it's Portugal. He even said that in the type form, but one other source is saying something different. And let's say what our quorum strategy will result in. It will look at all those values and it will create those two new attributes, country code and country code confidence, and it will say the majority of the source attributes were having PT, which is Portugal, as the value, and the confidence here is 75% because 75% of your input attributes yielded the same result. So we can use that confidence to use it as a filter, so you only make certain decisions on the data activation only if the confidence is high enough. Let's say maybe if you have more attributes, you can set it to 90% or something like that, and only after make use of certain unified values. So that was one of the ways you can unify multiple attributes into one. Now we'll go into the third use case we wanted to show you today about how to compute and generate new data. And this use case is mostly around implementing some logic on the raw data so that it's more straightforward and convenient to use it in destination tools. A primary example from our own usage will be to compare users' technographics information about the tools that he may be using with what we support so that we can use it for lead scoring, for instance, and we can run a certain marketing campaigns just for users that have at least a number of matching technologies that we can support. So those people who are having a lot of tools that we don't have, we want be our focus. So that could be also a processor logic, pretty similar as the first one. It will be an array where I will define those values. Maybe I'll show you that really quick because that will be pretty straightforward code. I'll again go to a processor code. And I will start by defining the list of technologies that we support, which will be here. This is not the full list of our connectors. This is just an example. And since this is a slightly different computation, I will just store it back on the user profile. Yeah, I had an error here, but I think it should be fixed now. And this user should have Clearbit Tech data coming in really quick. Yeah, actually, let me just quickly check what we have here. Yep, so let me just get back to the code to make it run really quick. Okay, so the end result here is 4. I had a small bug in my code. I was just changing it last minute before the webinar. So it can be a count, but let's say I would like to actually know the actual. So let's say this attribute will be called matching tech count, and I will create a new one just below, which will be very similar, unified matching tech, and I will just would like to see the values of those tools. And I will paste it here. So you can see we are computed the count, which may be very convenient for your segmentation and just trigger the campaign for people who have passed the threshold. But you can have the actual values here in a separate attribute, and then you can use it maybe in your personalized messaging, asking a person if he's maybe using one of those, and you probably have high chances of telling something that resonates with your user. So that was one way of generating new data points based on the existing data points. And let's go one step further. So now we'll look into the events data. So as I said, events are a stream of activities related to the user or performed by the user. and attributes are something that are stored. And the thing is that not all destination tool may be supporting events, or maybe using them is not as convenient. And also not tools can store events indefinitely. That includes how we will store your events, in most cases for 90 days, except some crucial lifecycle events. So you may want to bubble up certain events data to an attribute, but it can be also because of it's much more convenient. So let me go back to the HAL dashboard to show you how you can do that. I will start by opening up which an interesting which has an interesting event demo booked made on a certain page. So you can see we have a couple of properties here that may tell us more about that event, when it happened, or how it happened, and what are the additional metadata provided. So let's say the user type in that text, he would like to learn more about segmentation when he was booking that demo. So I'll go back to a processor code and show you how easy it is to bubble up that event information to an attribute. Going to the code editor again, I hope by now you're like feeling very comfortable about that. So I'll start by going to events here. On the left side, we can obviously preview that. The events is an array, so a table or a list of events that won't include all the events that ever happened on that user. These will be only the most recent events that actually made that user being updated, and then it hits the processor. So it will be a list of events. So I'll need to do a small loop where I iterate over the events, and I will search for a particular event. So I need to check if the event I'm just encountering here is demo booked. If it's the case, now I can write my attribute. And again, I will stick to the convention unified slash, which is a character to use for grouping attributes together. And I will call that last demo booked at. And I will pick the date from the actual event. So here on the right side, hopefully I will see that previewed value of an attribute. So the last demo booked is happened at this time, and it's very convenient to have that last event information being updated every time it happened, because if you imagine this triggers either a notification to the salesperson, you probably want to make it happen again, even if the user makes that activity again after a long period of time, because it maybe means he's again interested in testing out the product. But let's say you also would like to know when the first event happened. There is also a way to achieve that. Let's say we would like to write a first demo booked at property, and here I would need to use a slightly advanced operation which we call set if null. That will tell our platform that this value can be updated only once. So it will contain the first occurrence of the event. So and the value is the same as in the previous example. So it will be when the event was created. So here the values will be the same, but next time the user performs the event, last demo book at will be updated, first demo book at will stay the same. But what if I want to bubble up some of the properties from the event? It's also very easy. I can just add more attributes here and look into the properties object. So here on the right side, we'll see that this note from a customer or from the lead is being bubbled up on the attribute. So it can go to a CRM system now, and salesperson can understand what are the additional details the user provided, or I can pull up the page. So maybe I can use it for some kind of analytics, and I can push that to an analytical tool or a data warehouse, so I can learn more about where the most events are heading. So that will be taking a couple of properties and information from the event data and store it on the user profile. So we covered all three use cases we wanted to show you today. First, simple standardization and data cleansing, data unification using a quorum strategy or a simpler priority list, and now generating new data points based on the raw data. So it will be now time to start putting your transform data into action. So you can start building segments based on those new data points that we transformed, and then activate and use that data in your marketing campaigns, for instance, or other destination tools. So you can start personalizing your emails or messaging. You can start building more advanced segmentation based maybe on the lead scoring logic or some other business logic that you have implemented and injected in your data flow. And last but not least, you can learn more about your data. So you can continue iterating on those transformations, because if you think about bubbling up new data points or unify the data, that can surface more information or more key insights about your data. So then you can take it to the next level, write a better transformation, make better segmentation, and in the end, provide better personalized experience for your users. And that we'll talk more in our next webinar, which will be about data synchronization. So it will be that final step of sending and syncing data out to destination tools that can be very different types of tools, and they may have different needs, but we'll showcase you the outgoing attributes mapping, how you can map different things at different fields, and also how you can define which users are synced out to the destination tools. That was it from me today. As we said, we'll be waiting for you during our office hours. After the webinar, we'll be on Zoom. We'll share a link with you in live Storm chat. Thank you very much for spending this time together with us today. I hope it was an informative webinar for you. See you soon.